Thank you for joining us today at this neighborhood meeting. This is our first step in talking about rezoning sub-area 12.2, which is identified as 390 residential. My name is Christy Malone. I'm your long-range planner, and I am here with my other planning colleagues, Chris Newbecker, who is the Teton County Planning Director, and Ryan Rooney, who also is a long-range planner for the county. And we also have Keith Gingrey from the County Attorney's Office here as well. So the setup for today's meeting, we are going to play a quick presentation. My hope is to replay the presentation on the half hour so that as people join, they can be included from sort of the very beginning and get all the background information. And then in the remaining time between those sessions, we will have time for questions and answers. For the question and answer portion, we have a few people in the room here, so we will let them go first, and then for those of you joining us on Zoom, we'll use the raise hand feature, and then we'll unmute you individually so that you can ask your question. So hold on to those questions. We will get to them. I'm going to go ahead and start our presentation.
Thank you for joining your Teton County Planning staff at this neighborhood meeting on a future rezone of sub-area 12.2, the 390 residential corridor. This first step in the process is to inform and engage the community on upcoming sub-area-wide zoning changes. At this very beginning point, there is no formal proposal for a new zone and no Planning Commission or Board of County Commissioner meetings scheduled yet. This meeting is to welcome the neighborhood to the process, explain some of the zoning standards under consideration to be included in a formal proposal, and get feedback to ensure that we are valuing and including the concerns of the people that live here and best understand the neighborhood's character. As a stable sub-area, you should not expect significant changes to the density or intensity of use and development as part of this rezone. Rather, this process can be viewed as an opportunity for you to engage with your neighbors, local planners, and elected officials to refine and improve land use and development standards for your neighborhood. The purpose of zoning and other regulatory tools is to implement the Jackson-Teton County Comprehensive Plan and to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the present and future inhabitants of the community. The purpose of a zoning map amendment is to publicly review a change to the official zoning map to ensure that it improves implementation of the comprehensive plan and also addresses those health, safety, or welfare issues important to the community. All land within Teton County has been or will be rezoned to align with the 2012 comprehensive plan. This rezone is just part of the phased countywide rezone of all properties to better implement that comp plan. It's the same initiative as the 2016 countywide rural area rezone, but we are now moving on to complete neighborhood areas, such as the Aspen Pines neighborhoods, individually to be sure that unique community character is respected and enhanced. Additionally, due to an ongoing lawsuit against the county that alleges existing zoning in your neighborhood to be unconstitutional because it's based on 1978 land use concerns and not the current comprehensive plan, the Board of County Commissioners has prioritized rezoning of your neighborhood. This way, land use standards can be planned at a community level rather than mandated by the court. This rezone initiative includes all properties within the approximately 200-acre sub-area 12.2 called 390 residential, as highlighted in the map on this page. The purpose of today's meeting is to inform neighbors and other interested parties about the rezone before any formal proposal is made or any public hearings are scheduled. It is equally intended to provide planning staff an opportunity to hear comments and concerns about the proposal early enough in the review process to allow for modifications to minimize any adverse impacts. Fortunately, even though they date back to 1994 or even 1978, much of your current zoning standards are consistent with the desired future character of the area represented in the 2012 Comprehensive Plan. This is why this area was identified as stable, and this is why you should not expect significant changes to the density or intensity of development and use allowances as part of this rezone. This chart on the slide was prepared for those currently zoned neighborhood conservation, which is the majority of the sub-area. If your property is currently zoned business conservation or affordable housing planned unit development, this information doesn't reflect your zoning allowance. And if you would like more information, please contact me directly. Some primary zoning elements under consideration at this time are environmental standards, limitations on physical development, uses that are allowed in the zone, and maximum density, or the smallest size a lot can be subdivided to. At this initial phase, planning staff is focusing on maintaining protections for water bodies, wetlands, swan, trout, and bald eagles, scaling physical development to the size of individual parcels, maintaining primarily detached single-family homes with accessory uses as primary use, and keeping lot sizes in the range of 1 to 5 acres. This zoning update has been included in the Planning Department work plan for many years, since the 2012 Comprehensive Plan was adopted, in fact, and is part of the phased rezoning of the entire county to implement and provide access to the 2012 Comprehensive Plan values. In 2016, all designated rural areas of the county were rezoned for this purpose. Complete neighborhoods, such as yours, were excluded so that we can address them individually and work within neighborhoods to enhance their character and qualities. This rezoning initiative for your neighborhood was prioritized by the Board of County Commissioners in their approval of the fiscal year 2021 work plan on July 21st, 2020. The information on this slide is an excerpt from that approved work plan and provides some background on the scope of this task. Defining desired character for all areas of the community provides predictability to planning and development. The illustration of our vision section of the 2012 Comprehensive Plan informs land development regulations that ensure no policy of this plan is forgotten and that all policies are implemented within the proper context. With this information, we can determine what policies and strategies are appropriate in which location. When considering a zoning change, we ask how we can improve implementation of the desired future character defined in this illustration of our vision section of the Comprehensive Plan. In adoption of the 2012 Comp Plan, your neighborhood was designated a complete neighborhood, which means we focus on enhancing quality of life as a shared community value. Character-defining features describe each sub-area through text, neighborhood forms, and photos and/or drawings. This sub-area is stable, which means that no change to the existing character is necessary. Development will be infill that maintains the existing identity or vitality. The sub-area may benefit from strategic infill or development of non-existing complete neighborhood amenities. Character-defining features of this sub-area include design for wildlife permeability, housing occupied by the workforce, and START bus services. Features of neighborhood forms include 1 to 5 acre lots, 2-story building heights, primarily residential uses, design for wildlife and/or scenery, and predominance of landscape over built forms. These are the guiding characteristics and attributes for the sub-area that will be implemented through this proposed zoning process. At this initial phase of the project, we are just meeting with the neighbors to engage and gather feedback before entering the formal review process. At this time, there is no staff report, no formal proposal, and no scheduled hearing dates before the Planning Commission or Board of County Commissioners. We are hoping to go before the Planning Commission in November of this year for review and recommendation on the project, and the Board of County Commissioners in December of this year. To stay informed on this rezoning initiative and stay involved, please visit jacksontetonplan.com, where this presentation and a recording of this meeting in its entirety will be made available. This also is the location where further information will be posted when it is made available. Please send us your email address so we can stay in touch directly. If you would like to provide your email address in the chat section of the Zoom meeting, please do so. Otherwise, you can email it to planning staff at kmalone@tetoncountywy.gov.
You can also send any written comments or feedback to this email address or mail it directly to the Planning Department at P.O. Box 1727. The project ID for this rezoning initiative will be ZMA 2020-0003. This can be used as an identifier to track on meeting agendas or just as outreach occurs in the future. Finally, as you prepare your written comments, we ask that you focus on improvements that we can make as part of your zoning and development future. Okay, thank you everyone. Hopefully that was informative. Like I said, we will repeat that video hopefully on the half hour, dependent on the amount of questions and conversations that we have in between. To get started, because we are here to listen to your feedback before we make any kind of formal proposal on what exactly this rezone would constitute. I would invite anyone that's in the room here to come up front and speak, give us your comments, ask questions, or whatever you prefer. And please state your name so we can make sure we keep track of everybody.
Peter Moyer.
Peter, can I just have you turn that switch on? I don't know if it's turned on right now or not.
And do you want to turn on the camera for people in the chamber so they can see what you're talking about?
Yeah, can you turn that on?
You're trying to get me stage right.
Your
What are your
camera.
neighbors thinking?
You all know what you want, so.
You moved that, or it's still?
Yeah. There you go. Got it.
Can you turn on your camera? Yeah, need to end.
Oh, I need to stop sharing is my problem.
Okay. Peter Moyer, I guess our property is part of the zone of Cheney Lane. And we were heavily involved back in 2012 when Alex Norton was pushing these nodes, complete neighborhood stuff to try to put a lot of density over on the West Bank, Wilson, the Aspens, whatever. And that was strongly resisted by the people, most of whom are old-time locals. It's not like we're a bunch of rich guys fighting, for this NIMBYs. What we're fighting for, and will continue to, is for our old-time neighborhoods that we love, and for wildlife that we have been trying our darndest to protect, where most of the predation is by SUVs, frankly. Population growth on the Village Road, which should be, and really is in a lot of ways, a wildlife conservation corridor. The last thing we need is the county staff to be pushing to develop further than what it is right now. Right now, it's neighborhood conservation. To go from neighborhood conservation to complete neighborhood, it's like a Trojan horse they're trying to bring in to the zoning in that area. And I just think it's dead wrong. In some ways, it's just, it's not full disclosure in a lot of ways. And it's hard to trust what's going on because what we've heard publicly from the leadership in the county for the past few years and more, this town is a park. That it's inappropriate to put more density up there, like around the Aspens. There already is a bunch, and there's no need for more. And then we get this coming into our area, which is right now zoned stable. After all we went through in 2012, it was stable. And if you call this furtherance of stability, it's about as destabilizing as you can get. to talk about rezoning a much bigger corridor than we were even looking at in 2012. There's an old saying, ain't broke, don't fix it. And what are you people doing? I mean, yeah, it justifies hundreds of hours of staff time, $10,000 or more to consultants, Alex Norton, whomever. But it just, I think it's just not an honest way to go about it. And there should be a whole lot of other things for the county staff as long-range planners to be dealing with, to come back and try to hit us again. And you'll get your reaction, I guarantee it. But it's just wrong. I mean, what are you up to? And why didn't we even get a report, a staff report, talking about specifics in terms of what you put up on the screen was bare minimum, but we didn't even get that. It was just a notice of meeting. And again, that's just, something's really rotten about this whole thing that's going on. Anyway, sorry to be candid, but I am.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. Did you have a specific question, or you just want a general response?
Yeah, I guess my specific question is, what in the world are you doing?
Okay, great.
Why?
Yes, and I
You were
totally.
in Florida back when this came up in 2012, started planning and then working in Tampa, Florida. This is kind of different than Tampa, Florida, and even in the county, it's a little different than a lot of the planning issues you see. Neighborhood conservation means neighborhood conservation, not dumping a lot of upzone density there.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. I can hear that there is some confusion on what's being proposed here. The rezoning initiative that's taking place, or that hasn't even started taking place, this is really just our first meeting just to invite you all to be a part of it, is in support of that 2012 comp plan. So it is in support of the stable sub-area. It is in support of everything that you went through, the 5 years that this community spent working really hard on putting that plan together. So this is basically putting the rules on the ground based on what that 2012 comp plan says. So aligning your zoning, so the allowances of what you can do for use and development on the sites, on the actual land, with what it says in the comprehensive plan.
No, I understand, Christy, what you're saying, but I remember back then very clearly the complete neighborhood that Alex Norton and other county people meant nodes for future big-scale development. And if you think this is sort of reinforcing conservation, I don't think it's going to be perceived that way. It's like, why? What are you doing?
Yeah, let's be clear that.
Why are you embracing this when you've got all this Tennis Heart and you've got all the South Park issues?
Absolutely, and let's be clear that in 2012, you were designated a complete neighborhood. So that is, there's two different, I guess, ways you can be classified, a rural area or a complete neighborhood. Based on what's there, you were identified as a complete neighborhood, but as a stable one. So basically, that what you have on the ground, sort of the character and the density that you have is appropriate in that location.
Well, again, I haven't seen that, Christy, in writing, and I don't remember seeing that back in 2012. What I remember very well back in 2012 was honoring complete neighborhood conservation. It wasn't this complete neighborhood stuff. That was what was actually defeated, was complete neighborhood zones, nodes in Wilson, the Aspens, and other areas. That was exactly what was turned down. It was conservation that was honored back then and should be honored now without going through all this again. I mean, it gets old.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as I mentioned several times in the presentation, this is a very fortunate circumstance where much of your current zoning and use allowances will be maintained throughout this rezone process. So it is part of a county-wide process. You know, as I said, in 2016, we dealt with all the rural areas. We did some rezoning there, and we sort of held out these complete neighborhood areas to deal with them individually because we wanted to make sure that we were reflecting all of the unique aspects of these individual neighborhoods. So that's sort of what we're starting right now. And that's why we're getting into your neighborhood and starting this rezoning initiative. As I mentioned, I don't think that you're going to see these really significant changes in development allowances and density. As you mentioned, that was a fear of yours. I would not characterize anything that we're talking about right now as an upzone. And I also would just like to let you know there is nothing in writing because this is the very beginning of the process. This is where we invite you to come tell us what's important, what are things that we need to make sure we know with you being a community member and a neighbor that actually lives in that area.
Well, again, I keep saying it, but what we want is stability.
Absolutely.
Stability doesn't mean an Alex Gordon complete neighborhood zone. I can tell you that. It's just not that. And stability I mean, look at what's going on with this virus, and it was going on before, but it's been accelerated now as people do not have to live and work full-time in the city. They can come work in a beautiful place like Jackson Hole, and you start creating more potential density in areas like the Village Road, and we can all hold on to our hats because there's over 7 billion people on this planet, a lot of whom work and live in cities, which is the last place they want to be right now. Why don't we ever hear about that, how you people are protecting us there? All we hear about is, oh, gee, we want to, do this rezone, but don't worry, it's going to be probably not a big deal in terms of upzoning. It's mostly just to confirm what was done in 2012. Again, you don't need to be doing this. You are, and it just was a lot of staff time, I guess.
Mr. Moyer, just also to comment, this was upon direction of the Board of County Commissioners. So I would be happy to share your thoughts with them, or if you would like to put them in writing to
That would
share.
be great, but I don't remember hearing anything from them in terms of notice of what's going on. I mean, what you put up in the board was basically a funding thing for the staff and for a consultant.
Our work plan is what gets approved every year that basically tells us these are the projects you are to work on as planning staff. So this rezone item was included in that work plan. It was approved in July, and so this is our start on the project.
Was the public notified of what you were proposing? So we can comment? I don't remember anything.
The work plan includes all of our projects for the entire year and on years into the future.
For the entire year, there was nothing specific about this that I ever saw or anyone I know saw. This is hitting us cold turkey. But anyway, I've said too much.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, this is the beginning of the process, so we'd love to keep you involved and we'd love to hear from everyone. At this point, this is kind of where we don't have anything in writing, we don't have a formal proposal. We're just here to listen to your concerns, for you guys to really help us get it right. So I think that's, we have plenty of time to work on getting it right.
And hopefully stable means stable. Thanks.
My name is Richard Collister, and I live on Miles Road. Been a property owner since '98 and a full-time resident since '03. And when I received this notice, I must admit I was totally confused because I wasn't sure what was going on. But the rumors were running rampant that you were going to divide every piece of property down to 1 acre, and therefore I have 6 acres, so now I've got 5 acres that I can sell off, which is wonderful from a financial point of view, and a total disaster for the community. Yesterday I had two cow moose with twins, a buck, a doe with triplets. Conservation is an absolute critical element of our neighborhood. And it's the reason why I bought there. It's the reason why we moved here full time. It's the reason why I stayed here. And if you're thinking of subdividing, and all of a sudden we're going to be able to have smaller and smaller plots and more residents, that's insane. Particularly, we don't have the infrastructure. The roads already can't take it. It took me 45 minutes to get here today. That used to take 15 minutes or even 8 minutes just to get to Albertsons. So if you're sitting here, I know you've got a lot of planning and everything ahead, but I have to tell you as a resident, what you're proposing or what I think you're proposing or raising as a proposal is insane. And I personally will do everything I can to oppose it. And I wish you all the best in your efforts. And thank you for your planning, but let's keep this neighborhood a successful neighborhood the way it is. It doesn't need to be changed. And that's not not in my neighborhood thing. Decisions were made years ago that proved you guys were right when you made those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and I think that is great. The mention of infrastructure is definitely something that we're going to be looking at. It is a stable sub-area. Like I said, there is no significant rezone or upzone being considered.
Then you need to deal with those rumors.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is David Hardy, and I basically agree with the comments that have been already made. I do have a question in that you use the language that it's not really an upzone, but the density. Have you figured out what the potential density increase would be in terms of how many acres are there now that could be created into home sites by virtue of going down to 1 acre sites?
No, the neighborhood form for this sub-area in the comprehensive plan lists 1 to 5 acre parcels. Most people right now are at a 3 acre minimum parcel size, so we kind of are dealing with the same range, but we have not made any proposal on what the minimum would be.
I think that is going to be a huge question.
Absolutely.
Because even though you say that the zoning will not permit bigger, greater density structures than a single family, maybe an accessory unit, in terms of how much more potential growth that could result in would be a factor of looking at how many acres there are that could be subdivided based on this 1 acre minimum into potential home sites. That is simply, that would simply be feeding the beast in terms of more houses, more people, and I don't care what kind of controls you try to put on with regard to restrictions as to who can buy, who can own, with the accessory residential units in place as well. All of that population increase is going to produce more need for more plumbers, more electricians, more roofers, more nurses, more teachers, and where are they going to live? So in that sense, I think feeding the beast is the perfect description. And then the wildlife factor is a huge issue in the sense that there are 1,000 towns around the world in the hills where you can look out at pretty hills with snow on them, that you can see on the winter that produce rivers that run through pretty forests, that go down to lakes where you can play in the summer. None of them. I mean, I've spent time in the Alps and the Himalayas and the Andes. None of them have big animals, except the Rocky Mountains, and we are obviously an epicenter of that. And that only exists today, or will only continue to exist, if we restrict the amount of development in animal-inhabited, big wild animal-inhabited areas. So that's going to be a huge issue as well that you can anticipate. I know this is just the first of the public comments, but those 3 subjects, I think, are going to be hammered on by thousands of people who are going to be very unhappy with this proposal. My last comment is, the first line that was on the screen as we walked in, said something to the effect of, this proposal is to implement the planning proposed in the 2012 comprehensive plan. I would strongly suggest that as passed in 212, allows for rezoning to be contemplated in the context of complete neighborhood arrangements, designation, but it doesn't, it's not a question of implementing, because that very phrase implies this was expected in terms of what was passed in the comprehensive plan, and all we're doing now is just implementing. That is absolutely not the case. I mean, this is discussing what might be permitted in terms of the language of the comprehensive plan, but is by no means required or necessary or expected. And therefore, we're pushing into something that is by no means a foregone conclusion. And I think it needs to be understood that public input and reaction is incredibly important, because this is not a foregone conclusion. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Hardy. And just to expand on that a little bit, the zoning that we have in our land development regulations, the whole purpose of it is to implement the comprehensive plan. So we have to have that nexus there. The problem that we're seeing here and in some other complete neighborhoods, and which unfortunately has gotten us into some legal questions as well, is where is that nexus to the 2012 plan when you have zoning that was instituted in 1978 or 1994? So that's why we're kind of methodologically going through every single rural area and every single complete neighborhood to say, let's double check and let's make sure that the zoning rules that we have in place are implementing that 2012 plan, that we're not overlooking anything, and that we can say straight face, this is an implementation of the 2012 plan. So I think that you all are fortunate in this sub area and that it is stable. So much of the new zone will be the same or similar to your current zone. But we have to go through this exercise in order to meet the purpose of our land development regulations, which is that implementing that larger guiding document, which is the 2012 plan. Okay, so we can play the presentation again if we like, or take a few more questions. Does anyone have?
There is one.
I don't have any questions, but I'd like to make a comment or two.
Of course, yes.
Actually, I may have a question.
From the audience, so we're going to get to them after we finish.
Yeah, there's two more.
Okay.
Go ahead, Robert.
Hi.
First thing I need to start off by saying, I took a short run so I could be here. I'm actually off the count. So I better clear that up right away. Second thing is, I gotta admit, when I saw the signs go up, and I see upzoning, and I live out there on Sylvester, just about smack in the middle of it. First thought through my mind was, what's a good thing I like Christie? Second thought was, oh my God, how do we upzone this chunk? And after hearing what you just said, maybe I don't need to be quite as alarmed as I was, but I am going to say that upzoning that particular chunk of real estate along 390 without a north bridge, forget about it. I mean, I don't know if anybody's driven around out there lately, see what's going on, but it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Another guy got bested last night on the way home, and to flesh out what David was talking about as far as wildlife, unfortunately, that area has been forced into being more wildlife habitat than it was originally. With the introduction of the big dog, it's changed everything. I mean, I've had a pair of twins and their mother hanging out in my backyard. I tried to mow my lawn 3 days last week, and I couldn't. First night was because one twin was in there by himself. Next night, it was a cow elk. Okay, the next night, both twins and the mom were back. 2 species of mule deer. And, and and I don't know if you know where my property is, but I'm butted up right against Tucker at the end of Sylvester Lane. And it's, I mean, there's an impact out there that go with this stuff. Along, I mean, besides the obvious, you know, and now that I hear you saying, well, we need to change the zoning, doesn't necessarily mean there's gonna be more density, but it's gonna change. Is that right? Did I get that right from your comment?
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, I got here a little.
I think to clarify, and it's good to know that the rumor mill's running, as our previous commenter said, that this should not be characterized as a significant upzone. That's not what we're trying to do. We are inviting you guys as community members because we want to protect the character of your neighborhood. This is something that we have to do, that we're systematically doing, going through and making sure and double checking that what's in place is consistent with the comprehensive plan. So 100% transparency, you know, this isn't anything that I think should be shocking or alarming to anyone at this point. We don't have anything proposed officially yet. This really is just making sure that you guys have a connection to your planners and to your electeds, and that you can let us know what's important.
But you don't know how happy I am to hear that, because it may have just prevented Keith from prosecuting me for Teton County's first political assassination.
Ron, let me ask you this, if I can ask you.
Go ahead.
How big is your lot?
I'm just under an acre.
So here's one of the issues. So some of your neighbors have argued the other direction, and they've actually sued the county. And their argument is, years ago, and it hasn't changed since 1978. Since 1978, the minimum lot size for this entire area is 3 acres. For whatever reason, some of the lots were created prior to 1978, and then there were some variances along the way, and so there are lots that are less than 3 acres. Actually, quite a few that are less than 3 acres. But if it was a perfect zone, meaning it met the dimensions of it, everybody would have a 3 acre or more parcel. But there's quite a lot that are under 3 acres. So some of your neighbors have argued that we are not being consistent, meaning we, the county, that we put on paper that it's a 3 acre minimum, but for the most part, a lot of people have less than 3 acres. So the argument's been made that we need to reevaluate this area to see, do we need to go to less than 3 acres? And some people can already do that through family subdivision, which we have no control over. People can make smaller than 3 acres, give it to a family member. And so then other neighbors who may not have family like that go, wait a minute, that's not fair. That guy got to go down to, you know, take his 3 acre parcel down to 3 different 1 acre parcels. So that's been the question. It's all based on, we finally found out, in 1978, they were looking at septic. I mean, that was the reason they were keeping it at 3 acres, so that septic. Since I'm assuming most of you are now on sewer, I'm not sure that's true of everybody out there, but I know a lot of you got onto the Wilson sewer. Question starts to become, okay, if the reason you were putting it at 3 acres was to address septic issues, so you weren't, you know, contaminating everyone else's water, and if everybody's on sewer, is there any reason, any, you know, thought of should we go less than 3 acres? That's sort of the, if I had to like boil this down to one question, because I don't think anybody really wants to change the zone in any way, other than maybe that one question. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, you know, it's interesting you brought that up too, because I said, and I'm not particularly bright, as you well know, lots of us on numbers in the neck both directions, but you know, I remember having discussions a long time ago that something needed to happen out there regarding sewer, because there was just up Sylvester Lane, historically, okay, what we had there, for years, we had 2 separate roads, okay, it was because, I think it was, Gordon Graham came in, and, no, Bob Sealander started cutting up the lots to the south, okay, Gordon Graham came in and started cutting up the lots to the north. That was originally Cheney property. That's why his name's Sylvester, after Sylvester Cheney. And so they got in the hassle. Sealander thought he was making the lots too big. Graham didn't. Long story short, it wound up with exactly exactly the same amount of lots both sides, so it didn't really matter. But I have 1 acre lot, there's one out at the end, actually there's 2 out at the end that are slightly bigger than mine. In fact, one of them, just a family bought it, and we put what they call the ARU on the front part of it, and, I think they call it, I'm not sure what they call it. And then the younger people moved into a 2-story humongous house, and they could do that because the lot that had been there, what was on that property, was a double wide with a tip-out apartment on it, so there were 2 dwellings there before, so it was grandfathered in. But like I said, we had that kind of sewage generation and pretty dense living, pretty close to wells kind of stuff. I used to make a joke out of it. I didn't finish the joke. It involves my neighbor to the north, and she's deceased, I'll let that go. But it was really good that Wilson came in, that the Wilson sewer came in, and I think, with the exception of 2 homeowners on Sylvester, everybody's on that. You know, and I would hope that that's true on up and down the road, because there's a lot of wells out there. I mean, I should probably get mine tested more often, but it stayed okay. But I get your point, you know, and, you know, that was one of those situations too, where south of me, and north of me, Kimball and, you know, north of me, Bill Kimball cut up, you know, to the north of me, what Bill did is he cut those lots up, and you had part of your property was on one side of the road, and then the north side of the road was for your horses. And that's pretty much what everybody's stuck with, you know. That held the density down somewhat there. But here we are, it's 2020, and we're dealing with stuff that went on, you know, we're still trying to fix things. And, you know, I'm not even going to get into what I consider to be a vacuum of leadership regarding transportation and everything else in the county. But, you know, it's, Wilson Sewer took care of a lot of problems that density brought up, you know. And north of me, it's less dense, typically. You know, those lots are bigger, they just are. But I don't know if that was by design or, but I think there was a little bit more economic interest in, you know, what went on where I am and south of me somewhat to a certain extent. But it's kind of neat where I live because I have the pines, you know, west of me, and Tucker behind me. The only drawback is, dang geese make a lot of noise, they're flying over the house, you know, the Tucker farms to the pines, but, you know, I'm kind of pinched up in the last bastion of the working class there on the west bank, you know, and there are things going on there that, I mean, I'd be a fool, well, no, I wouldn't either, because I don't plan on living anywhere else, but there's been a couple houses, one was a spec house that went in, it was slated to hit the market for 3.2. Fortunately, he missed the market, 2008 happened, and I don't think it went for that. But I've been told that the house next door to me recently sold for just that amount. And my wife and I argued about this, but we paid, Carla paid, she was married to the first husband at that point, somewhere between $42,000 and $46,000. Wow. So,
let me ask you this real quick, Rob, because I think there's some people on Zoom that want to ask some questions. Since you were familiar, so even you're a great person to ask this to, have you ever run into any issues with setbacks in the area, or do you think other uses should be allowed in the area? Is there anything that's in this zone that you've ever run up against and go, boy, I wish that wasn't the rule, I wish they changed that? Is there anything else in this zone that you've ever ran up against?
Well, you know, outside of a few spiteful neighbors, probably not so much.
But setbacks are fine.
Well, I mean, the setbacks are kind of what they are, and a couple of them on our road, Goldie, he got well back in the road. There's another house there, I think, predated his, but, no, I mean, it kind of worked. Actually, things were just not understood and clear enough back there that, and I don't know if you've ever seen them, but Lower Valley had used a lot of underground transport. I mean, so all you saw was this grade sticking up, or flush with the ground. Well, the transformer that fed our house was actually in my next door neighbor's front yard. So Lower Valley missed the property line. So, and my house was a little bit skewed as far as being straight with the property. I don't think it's not bad. Little, I don't think it could be put that close again. Okay, but then this is another one of those situations where you don't get the hay back in the horse. I don't know how you're gonna fix that stuff.
We better see what your other neighbors have to say on it.
Thanks, Rob.
Appreciate it.
Tell Mrs. Watsonbaugh thank you for her comments too.
What's that?
Tell your wife thank you for her comments as
Okay, I
well.
will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so maybe let's do a couple Zoom questions, and in like 10 minutes or so, we'll do the presentation again, just in case anyone's tuning in right at the 5 o'clock hour. So who do we have up?
Richard Manning Jr. I'm unmuting you now. Hey, Rick.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Rick.
Okay, very good, thank you. As you said, my name is Richard Manning Jr. I represent one of the owners of one of the business conservation zone properties. Happens to be my parents, Rick and Terry Manning, for the Ram Construction property on the north end of this particular zoned area. Christy, you mentioned something in the beginning of the presentation that those of us with business conservation zone properties need to contact you to some extent to find out what the impact of this zoning is going to be on our properties. I was hoping I've already sent you an email to that extent, but I would also like to ask if you could kind of expound upon that just briefly for our edification at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning this, because I think it is an important part. So the majority of this sub area is zone neighborhood conservation, but we do have a handful, maybe just a couple of these outlying business conservation zone properties. So while everything that we've kind of talked about and presented so far is generalized around changes to the neighborhood conservation properties, if you are in a BC zone, which you are, I would like to talk to you personally just to understand kind of your operational components and how that zone is working for you before we get into any details of thinking about rezoning those sites. So yeah, I would say that if I have your email, I'll get back to you and we can set up a time to chat. We definitely will look at those sites specifically and do a full regulatory review, just so we can examine all the ins and outs of potential changes before we do anything to those, because those are kind of unique and different than the other, the majority of the zoned properties. So yeah, so thank you. I will get back to you on that and look forward to working with you on it.
Looks like you need to, do you want to do 2 more? There's 3 more in the room.
Yeah.
Okay, Susan Crisser.
Yep, I'm here. My name is Susan Kritzer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I live on Pony Lane. My lot is adjacent to the Village Road and backs up to the Tucker Ranch entrance. And I can observe outside my window from where I'm sitting right now the substantial increase in Village Road volume that's been talked about earlier, and the major backups that occur due to various accidents over the courses of the years. I also have a game cam in my yard, and I have captured pretty much everything except a grizzly and a wolf on my game cam, sometimes in just the course of a couple nights. Moose, elk, raccoons, mountain lions, bear, black bear. It definitely is a major wildlife corridor going back and forth between Tucker Ranch and Teton Pines. I guess the one comment I want to make is that I think that the zoning that exists within this area, particularly on my street, is already going to be allowing more development. We had an empty lot on the street that was filled with both a house and an ARU. We've had another ARU built on our street. Our street is particularly conducive to that because we have a half acre on either side of the street. I know that several of my neighbors have already considered putting up ARUs to provide long-term rentals in workforce housing. So I just want to comment that I think that even with the existing zoning, I've already observed that the density on our street is significantly increasing. And I'm a little concerned that if we would consider allowing the remaining 3 acre or 2 acre lots in this area to also be subdivided, then also be allowed to build a primary residence in an ARU, that it would really substantially increase the traffic and impede the wildlife.
Susan, how big's your parcel?
I have 1 acre.
So you would argue
Pardon me?
that we shouldn't make any change? Would your argument be just don't make any changes? It's a good zone, no changes are needed?
Right. I mean, I think with the ability of everyone on most of these streets to build a secondary unit that they could use or rent out, it's the density is going to increase already. I would hate to see any additional changes that would allow something beyond that, because I know it already is becoming more dense here and more traffic up and down the roads and less room for the wildlife.
Thank you, Susan. Those are great comments. Thank you so much for tuning in and for adding those thoughts.
You're welcome.
Sherry Jern.
Hi, this is Sherry Jern. We live on Cheney Lane. We have a 2 acre lot. When we first moved to Jackson in 1976, we lived in the Aspens on a ½ acre lot where we built a log house. In 1988, we bought a piece of property in the Rain Tree development on 3 acres, which we had the Wildflower Inn, which is a bed and breakfast. That was 3 acres. We're now on Cheney Lane. We sold the Wildflower Inn, which is now the Wildflower Lodge. And now we have 2 acres. So we've known on the Village Road that there are a mix of 1, 2, 3 acre lots, perhaps more. It's a very old neighborhood, and people know that the construction, the building of it has been a mishmash. Christy, thanks for, I wrote a letter to everyone this morning. Christy, you did clarify some things. Your letter that you sent out to us, rather than presenting it as a discussion of the neighborhood so much, you did say a meeting to discuss rezoning. So I think that raised a lot of people's anxiety level. My biggest concern with development, increased density on the Village Road, is safety. Like I said, we live on a dead-end road. If we had a disaster, emergency of any kind here, it would be really hard to evacuate this population. And the 390 enters into 22. When 390 or 22 are blocked up, both are blocked up. Traffic is a mess out here. And I invite you guys to come out and really experience it. It's been horrible. We've had more sirens and ambulances and fire trucks in the last couple of weeks than we have ever had in the 40-some years that we've lived out here. Lots of accidents, lots of rear end accidents. I heard there was a bicycle accident yesterday. I haven't heard the details of that. Safety is my biggest issue. Again, the septic tank, well water issue. Some people are on sewer. I know the Wildflower Inn on 3 acres is still a well situation with septic tank. And a lot of the septic tanks are not pumped on a regular basis. I understand the legalities of some of these things you're going through. We had the Wildflower Inn. The bed and breakfasts were not included in the business conservation ruling that you guys did years ago. Anyway, you've got my letter. I just wanted to say safety is my main concern with traffic. Wildlife we need to preserve. Again, like everyone else said, we've got the moose with the deer with the triplets too. We've had the mother moose and the baby. They migrate up and down the village road. There's a lot of wildlife traffic. And in fact, I would say there's almost more this year. They're getting pushed into us. So that's what I have to say. Anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much, Sherry, and thank you for your letter as well. We look forward to working with you in the future as we move forward on this one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Phelps iPad, Mr. Phelps.
Thank you, Chrissy. This is Phelps Swift, and I live in the Kennel, on Kennel Lane in the Rain Tree subdivision. And I have a question. You've described this potential rezone as continuing our stable neighborhood and not upzoning it. And I just want to ask a question about the draft language on the new comp plan, which adds a sentence in section subarea 12.2. And it says the northern portion of the subarea within walking distance of the Aspens is an appropriate location for additional units that have been directed out of the rural areas. That sounds to me like an upzone possibility or to dump density. I'm not sure if you are doing this rezone under the 2012 comp plan or under the draft comp plan. So I'm just trying to understand how you square, the stability with that language.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, and thank you for getting into the details of the comp plan update too. I know it's been a lengthy process, and I'm happy that you're staying with it. So that sentence was proposed in conjunction with potential workforce housing going onto the Rains parcel. So my recollection is that when the county gave up ownership of that parcel, that sentence was scratched from the proposal. Let me double check on that for you, since there is so many components of that update. We've moved around a lot just in the past few months on it. So let me check into that for you and see if that is intended to be part of the draft, or if that was something that the Board of County Commissioners requested to be taken out of the draft since they let go of ownership. Is that okay? Did I get back to you on it?
Yeah, well, I will say it's in the July 29th draft, which was long after that parcel changed hands.
Okay, yeah, let me take a look and make sure that we got it right in there and it's meant to be in there, and if so, we can have that larger discussion.
And Phelps, it hasn't been approved yet, so it can still get taken out. There's really no need for it to be there now. The county doesn't own it. Plus, this whole discussion is on the east side of the road, right?
It extends up to Rain Tree, so it's kind of it crosses the road at the very top. So I think that was part of the discussion, is whether the county would pursue higher density workforce housing on that property.
But the fence is there, it can still be crossed up.
Exactly, that has not been approved yet, so it's something that I can check into at this point, and we can revisit with your county commissioners to clarify.
The other question I had, it wasn't really clear. The northern boundary of subarea 12.2 is where? Is it on? Do you know where that actual boundary is?
Not off the top of my head. I'd have to show you on a map. The other thing about these boundaries is there are kind of some transitional areas as well. So they actually are represented in the comp plan as like gray lines, as gray areas almost in between the two districts. For the most part, it's clearly defined in this area because there's roads and property lines. Some places we don't have that luxury to kind of have these more physical boundaries to mark where the edges of the district are. So let me take a look there. Is it a specific property that you're interested in, if it's in or out, or?
I just want to know where the northern boundary is, because it was a little,
Okay.
the map you sent seemed a little different from the county GIS.
Yeah, I can provide you the better one. I know that the copies that you were mailed weren't the best quality, so we'll make sure that we make that available to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Christie, there is another that came in through the shooting star. Do you want to do?
Yes, yeah. We'll answer all the questions and then we'll do our presentation one more time and see if we have any more questions.
$3745 Shooting Star. Trying to unmute you. But it's not working.
Do you want me to try?
Sure. Clicking in.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, you're good. Yep.
Yes, thank you. Go
Oh,
ahead.
great. I was just talking to myself for a bit. Sorry about that. My name is Pete Kokovinsky. I live at 3745 Shooting Star Lane, and I was just curious if my property's in or out. As the previous gentleman noted, the line seemed to go through some of the properties.
Can I get your phone number and I'll get back to you on with a yes or no?
Absolutely. It's 917-612-0973. Thank you very much.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. I'll go on mute again. Thanks.
Looks like Sherry is back with another question.
Okay.
Sherry, I'm unmuting, or I'm trying to.
No, okay, all right. Yeah, I just had a comment. The northern boundary of the zoning was the buck rail fence in our backyard on the Aspen side. If that helps anyone. We lived on Raintree, and the boundary was between our property and the Rains property. So if that answers Phelps's question, that was all.
Thanks, Sherry. Thanks for adding that. That is helpful.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so, we have one more.
Patricia.
Yes, hello. Yes, I'm Patricia Cheddar, and I live at 3950 Tewanot, which is in Lake Creek 2, and I don't think we were part of this particular discussion. However, what I would like to add is that I agree with what's been said about the conservation, the wildlife, and the traffic. I've seen way too many moose and deer killed on the 390. And the reason why my husband and I moved here in 2016 was because of the wildlife. And in fact, my husband, who's on this Zoom call too, he was rear-ended about 2.5 weeks ago on 390, and all 3 cars were totaled. And people drive way too fast. And I agree with what was already said, that safety is an issue when we have to turn left into our subdivision. But also my question is, I received the letter as well, and the tone of the letter was that there would be increased building, higher density building along this corridor. And my question about this is, how is that not going to impact increased traffic and increased accidents and increased wildlife deaths?
Thank you, Patricia, and I think that that is reflective of the feedback that we're really looking for at this point. I apologize for the letter. It's a template that we send out for all of our applications, so it's not intended to scare anybody. So we'll take a look at that and see if we can add some more welcoming language, just not to up anyone's anxiety. But yeah, I think this is exactly the kind of feedback that we're looking for. As Mr. Gingrey mentioned earlier, we know back in 1978, the only thing we were looking at regarding density was the capacity of septic systems. That's not as much a concern anymore, but we have all of these new and varied concerns. And what I'm hearing over and over, which is very apparent, is wildlife and transportation. So I think we're looking at those as these two priorities, and then also I think just the general character of the neighborhood, of the community, making sure that that is enhanced and protected and not compromised by anything moving forward. So thank you so much for your comments. I know that you mentioned that you're not within the actual rezone area, but you are a neighbor. We do send out notices to neighbors as well, because we do want to hear about the impacts to you as a part of the neighborhood or in the vicinity of the neighborhood. So thanks so much for tuning in.
Thank you, Christy. I will also like to add that even though our neighborhood is not part of this particular discussion, the impact is still there because we have to go to town. We have to go into Wilson
Absolutely.
to pick up our mail. So it does impact us.
Yeah.
And it is really frightening to drive on 390 lately. The traffic is abhorrent, and it doesn't seem to stop until it's very, very dark. And that's when a lot of the wildlife gets killed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thanks so much, Patricia.
We have two more.
Oh, should we just keep going, or should we do presentation again? All right, we're gonna keep going.
Okay. Mark, you're now unmuted.
Thank you. Mark Montalcino here. I live on the end of Wiley Lane. First to say, Mr. Gingrey and the commission, you guys appreciate your help with everything. But here's a view from what those of us that live in this corridor. I'm at the end of Wiley Lane, and between 7:30 and 9 every day, and between 4:30 and 6, I can barely get out of my road driveway without getting hit by a car. It is treacherous, and over the last 8 years living there, it's grown exponentially. So doing more on that road is a bad idea. Doing less is the smart, safe idea for all of us driving, for all of us that should be biking more, and for all of our kids. The second thing is that at the end of Wiley Lane, there's an open space lot that is one of the few open spaces really left that has the potential to be developed. 4 days ago, there was a mom elk and, mom deer and 2 babies. There was a mom moose and 2 babies. There was some construction work in Tucker Ranch. There was chaos at the campground. They got pushed from that lot to my yard. I saw them 30 minutes later trying to cross the highway through the gauntlet at about 5:30. It's a shocker and just pure luck that one didn't get killed. There is wildlife corridor in this section, and I don't think that anything we're trying to do with this procedural is going to protect that. Jane Ottman at our last meeting spoke very well about, really this is about protecting wildlife and protecting each other. That's what brought us here. That's why we live on this road. And trying to do more is just a bad idea. So I encourage and thank everybody on here, and encourage all of them to be very vocal. I don't think any further development in this corridor is a good idea. Thank you.
Dr. Montalcino, since you're a co-defendant with the Teton County, in this lawsuit dealing with Wiley Lane, would it be your position that, especially the Hirschberg property, which is the property you're talking about, that the 3-acre minimum should remain in this zone, or do you think that should be altered in any way?
Well, I think for sure the 3-acre minimum should be there. And both the owner of the lot behind me, when he purchased it, and myself were very clear in knowing that that was never going to change, that there was never going to be a possibility of anything smaller than that. And we both purchased it with that knowledge. And so for that to change seems disingenuous to me.
Thanks, Robert.
Scott, possible?
Yeah, I mean, I want to underline, I live in the northwest corner of the Aspens. That's part of this, at 3570 North Lake Creek. I've been here for 27 years. But yeah, wildlife, traffic, all of them have changed dramatically in our time here. I also have trail cameras, and unlike Sue, and I know Sue, I actually did have a grizzly bear in my backyard. 5 different bears in one night. I've had otters. I mean, I don't know if you plan on changing the zoning for a moose, but they have a fixed amount of space they need. And as you add more and more density of housing, that simply, very simply leaves less and less for a lot of our ungulates. And I think you ought to inform the moose next time too, how many acres they're going to be permitted to have under your revised plan. And I know we talk about it's a rezoning initiative, but the fact is you're talking about adding more housing, adding more traffic, reducing wildlife. I don't support any of that.
Thank you for your comments, Scott, and thank you for sharing what's important to you about the neighborhood. So we're hearing wildlife, we're hearing traffic. Thank you so much, and we're excited for you to be involved in this process.
Barbara Delazzo?
Yes, I just wanted, I live just north of this area in Wilderness Road, and I just want to concur with the previous 2 speakers, at least. I can't agree more that the traffic is getting worse, the wildlife is getting more stressed, and, frankly, we residents are getting more stressed. And this is only the easement on the right side of the road, and I'm concerned about what's going to happen on the left side of the road. The Aspens corridor, the Aspens area that's already somewhat developed, and that does not become more developed, because that will ruin our whole neighborhood. That's all. Thanks. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Barbara, and that's a good comment that you brought up too. So we intentionally broke up this sub area and took out 12.2 because you guys are so different than the master plan communities on the other side of the road. So we're going to get to that area eventually and look over the zoning standards for those, for Teton Pines and for the Aspens community. So we're not doing that yet. We will get to it. So it gives me great confidence to know that you guys are on board and are ready to talk about that as well when we get there.
Great.
No more hands. Anyone else? Last chance for a hand raise. I also wanted to mention, I don't know if anyone is joining by phone, but if you are joining by phone and not by like through the Zoom app, you can dial *9 and it'll indicate a raised hand to us on our end, so we'll know that you have a question. So that's another way to get to us is dial *9 if you're using the phone in option.
It looks like we have another. We have 2 more. First, Mike Pritchard.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
I live on Wiley Lane as well. Lived there since 2001, and we definitely have seen a lot more density. I think we need to look at the whole picture, especially in that zone from the Calico to the campground is already pretty dense. I as well worry that if we go to the 1 acre parcels, that area at the end of Wiley Lane will turn into 5 houses, adding, 10 or 12 more cars. I think Wiley Lane itself is already pretty slow and, a gravel road as well. We have a hard time getting all the neighbors on board to even contribute to plow the snow, much less maintain the road. I think that would be a lot more difficult for areas like ours. I also agree that the wildlife in the area is fantastic. We have all these different animals in our yard, and we text each other and let each other know that, be careful, there's a moose in the yard, be careful, there's a bear out back in the tree. All those things are very important to everybody that lives in that zone. We also, have children in that neighborhood that try to cross the road to the bike path. I'm a biker as well. I try to cross the road to get on the bike path pretty much daily, and it can be terrifying. I know we had that guy hit out in front of Wiley Lane yesterday, which sort of all brought it really close to home to us, literally and figuratively. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in and let everybody know that I want the greater density as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your comments. We greatly appreciate it.
John Kanengider.
Yeah, thanks. First and foremost, just for having this opportunity to discuss this on a environment that allows for all of us to speak, and for all of you that are on the council right now. I know these are really hard decisions that you're working with, and I get that. I'm a 35-year resident of Wyoming, 8 years here in Teton County at this resident that I have adjacent to the property that you're talking about. I agree with Dr. Menlo that we've created an hourglass that the wildlife is moving through right now. This proposition is going to increase that hourglass deeper. At some point, it's going to be called off. And when that happens, there's no turning back. And so we have to plan for that. And what I think is that this hourglass is getting smaller and smaller as we talk about it. My emotion around this whole event is that I'm a little bit sad, as here we are, but at the same time, I really want to be a team player to this whole event. I don't want to be a NIMBY. I think Jackson is being dealt a deck of cards right now that's really hard. But what I don't want to see is a sprawl start to happen. And what I want to see is a concentration of us versus a concentration of the wildlife and our natural resources that we have right now. So what I really want to have happen is, as I've heard other people speaking, the infrastructure is a key point to what's going on right now. Just rezoning is not going to change the infrastructure. And I don't know where we go with that exactly, but I think the infrastructure is number one and rezoning is number two in my mind. And I'll leave it at that. And thank you for all the work that you all are doing.
Thanks so much for your comments, John. And I think you really got to the complexity of the issue too when we're dealing with an area that is a state roadway. But we have these privately held lands within the jurisdiction of Teton County. So, you know, we often see that in our county where we have a different jurisdiction of some of the infrastructure than we do some of the private land. So we definitely are very aware of that and acknowledge that. But thanks for mentioning that.
Okay, next up is Jenny Hutchinson.
Well, I happen to be John's wife, so hello. Thank you, John, for speaking for us on 3905 Raintree. And Christy, thanks for holding this for all of us. And many of my neighbors are online, so I see your names up, so I appreciate a lot of participation in our community. I think my bottom line is you're asking us for a question, and it's should we rezone? And do we agree with the 3-acre restrictions, or can we go down? And we are on a 3-acre parcel. And what I appreciate is that we also have a rental unit that we house people for affordable housing. We have a unit that we appreciate that we have 3 people that are in addition to us that live here. But I don't want to see that increase to the point of what we're seeing on Rabbit Row. And I see that area encroached upon. The wildlife are getting cut out. The traffic there has increased. And I can only imagine if we did that across this entire Moose Wilson Road, what that might look like for all of us. So let's be thoughtful about it. Thank you for asking our opinion. But my personal stance would be that let's keep the 3 acres.
Thanks so much, Jenny. I appreciate you, focusing that question to the density issue, which it seems like is the primary issue that we've been talking about today. So that's great, and we, definitely look forward to you staying in this process and helping us out.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, we don't have any more questions, so we're going to run the presentation one more time for those of you that joined late and missed it. The other thing I want to mention is that all of this information will be made available online. So for those of you that, missed the presentation or want to watch it again or just want more information, we will have a project page for this project on jacksontetonplan.com. That is our long-range planning page, and you also can email me for resources. My email is kmalone, so it's KMALONE @tetoncountywy.gov. So I just wanted to let everyone know this is kind of our first step, is engaging the community, is making sure that you all have that connectivity between your neighbors and your planners, and then we can move forward together. So we will have more information for you as we move forward in this process, and it will be easily accessible online as we kind of try to move into this COVID era world. So we're going to play the presentation one more time for those of you that want to stick around.
Run the video, the audio through directly.
Try it again.
Thank you for joining your Teton County planning staff at this neighborhood meeting on a future rezone of subarea 12.2, the 390 residential corridor. This first step in the process is to inform and engage the community on upcoming sub-area-wide zoning changes. At this very beginning point, there is no formal proposal for a new zone and no Planning Commission or Board of County Commissioner meetings scheduled yet. This meeting is to welcome the neighborhood to the process, explain some of the zoning standards under consideration to be included in a formal proposal, and get feedback to ensure that we are valuing and including the concerns of the people that live here and best understand the neighborhood's character. As a stable sub-area, you should not expect significant changes to the density or intensity of use and development as part of this rezone. Rather, this process can be viewed as an opportunity for you to engage with your neighbors, local planners, and elected officials to refine and improve land use and development standards for your neighborhood. The purpose of zoning and other regulatory tools is to implement the Jackson-Teton County Comprehensive Plan and to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the present and future inhabitants of the community. The purpose of a zoning map amendment is to publicly review a change to the official zoning map to ensure that it improves implementation of the comprehensive plan and also addresses those health, safety, or welfare issues important to the community. All land within Teton County has been or will be rezoned to align with the 2012 comprehensive plan. This rezone is just part of the phased countywide rezone of all properties to better implement that comp plan. It's the same initiative as the 2016 countywide rural area rezone, but we are now moving on to complete neighborhood areas, such as the Aspens Pines neighborhoods, individually to be sure that unique community character is respected and enhanced. Additionally, due to an ongoing lawsuit against the county that alleges existing zoning in your neighborhood to be unconstitutional because it's based on 1978 land use concerns and not the current comprehensive plan, the Board of County Commissioners has prioritized rezoning of your neighborhood. This way, land use standards can be planned at a community level rather than mandated by the courts. This rezone initiative includes all properties within the approximately 200-acre sub-area 12.2 called 390 residential, as highlighted in the map on this page. The purpose of today's meeting is to inform neighbors and other interested parties about the rezone before any formal proposal is made or any public hearings are scheduled. It is equally intended to provide planning staff an opportunity to hear comments and concerns about the proposal early enough in the review process to allow for modifications to minimize any adverse impacts. Fortunately, even though they date back to 1994 or even 1978, much of your current zoning standards are consistent with the desired future character of the area represented in the 2012 comprehensive plan. This is why this area was identified as stable, and this is why you should not expect significant changes to the density or intensity of development and use allowances as part of this rezone. This chart on the slide was prepared for those currently zoned neighborhood conservation, which is the majority of the sub-area. If your property is currently zoned business conservation or affordable housing planned unit development, this information doesn't reflect your zoning allowance. And if you would like more information, please contact me directly. Some primary zoning elements under consideration at this time are environmental standards, limitations on physical development, uses that are allowed in the zone, and maximum density, or the smallest size a lot can be subdivided to. At this initial phase, planning staff is focusing on maintaining protections for water bodies, wetlands, swan, trout, and bald eagles, scaling physical development to the size of individual parcels, maintaining primarily detached single-family homes with accessory uses as primary use, and keeping lot sizes in the range of 1 to 5 acres. This zoning update has been included in the Planning Department work plan for many years, since the 2012 Comprehensive Plan was adopted, in fact, and is part of the phased rezoning of the entire county to implement and provide nexus to the 2012 Comprehensive Plan values. In 2016, all designated rural areas of the county were rezoned for this purpose. Complete neighborhoods, such as yours, were excluded so that we can address them individually and work within neighborhoods to enhance their character and qualities. This rezoning initiative for your neighborhood was prioritized by the Board of County Commissioners in their approval of the fiscal year 2021 work plan on July 21st, 2020. The information on this slide is an excerpt from that approved work plan and provides some background on the scope of this task. Defining desired character for all areas of the community provides predictability in planning and development. The illustration of our vision section of the 2012 Comprehensive Plan informs land development regulations that ensure no policy of this plan is forgotten and that all policies are implemented within the proper context. With this information, we can determine what policies and strategies are appropriate in which locations. When considering a zoning change, we ask how we can improve implementation of the desired future character defined in this illustration of our vision section of the comprehensive plan. In adoption of the 2012 comp plan, your neighborhood was designated a complete neighborhood, which means we focus on enhancing quality of life as a shared community value. Character defining features describe each sub-area through text, neighborhood forms, and photos and/or drawings. This sub-area is stable, which means that no change to the existing character is necessary. Development will be infill that maintains the existing identity or vitality. The sub-area may benefit from strategic infill or development of non-existing complete neighborhood amenities. Character-defining features of this sub-area include design for wildlife permeability, housing occupied by the workforce, and START bus services. Features of neighborhood forms include 1 to 5 acre lots, 2-story building heights, primarily residential uses, design for wildlife and/or scenery, and predominance of landscape over built form. These are the guiding characteristics and attributes for the sub-area that will be implemented through this proposed zoning process. At this initial phase of the project, we are just meeting with the neighbors to engage and gather feedback before entering the formal review process. At this time, there is no staff report, no formal proposal, and no scheduled hearing dates before the Planning Commission or Board of County Commissioners. We are hoping to go before the Planning Commission in November of this year for a review and recommendation on the project, and the Board of County Commissioners in December of this year. To stay informed on this rezoning initiative and stay involved, please visit jacksontetonplan.com, where this presentation and a recording of this meeting in its entirety will be made available. This also is the location where further information will be posted when it is made available. Please send us your email address so that we can stay in touch directly. If you would like to provide your email address in the chat section of the Zoom meeting, please do so. Otherwise, you can email it to planning staff at kmalone@tetoncountywy.gov. You can also send any written comments or feedback to this email address or mail it directly to the Planning Department at P.O. Box 1727. The project ID for this rezoning initiative will be ZMA 2020-0003. This can be used as an identifier to track on meeting agendas or just as outreach occurs in the future. Finally, as you prepare your written comments, we ask that you focus on improvements that we can make as part of your zoning and development future. I should leave it on the last slide. All right, so we are gonna have one last chance for questions. If anyone has any last thoughts or has something that they would like to share. If not, I've left my contact information up on the screen. So you're welcome to send me an email, or if we need to set up a time to talk, we can do that. We're really excited that we had so many attendees to this meeting today and so many great questions. And, you know,
the community character of this neighborhood is so important and so valued. So I'm really happy that we all could have this chance to chat before we get into any kind of formal review process. So if you do have questions, please use the raise your hand feature and we will unmute individually. Again, if you are calling by phone and not using the Zoom app to raise your hand, it's *9 on your keypad. Okay, so not seeing any raised hands, I think we'll close up the neighborhood meeting here. This certainly is not the last chance for you to share all of your thoughts and suggestions and concerns with us. We are, we're your planning staff. We're here to enhance and protect your neighborhood character. So thank you all for joining us. And as I said, this information will be posted online if you would like to share it with your friends and neighbors. And we also will be posting any information on this project in the future to jacksontetonplan.com. So that's sort of the main landing page for all of our long-range projects. And then we'll have an individual project page for this rezone initiative. So thank you all. We'll close up here. And like I said, stay in touch and enjoy the rest of your evening.